All right, NBA draft winners and losers, Brendan. I'm going to kick this off. And I'm gonna start positively, and I'm gonna start with the team that has the belt, has the world at their fingertips. Now I'm gonna say the Denver Nuggets. Here's why: they get Julian Strawweather, they get Hunter Tyson. This is a team that had needs, that knew what it needed, that knows the kind of players it wants, and targeted picks in the range that those guys were going to go and pick them up, and that is insurance for. If KCP gets older and moves on, if they need another wing for injury reasons, they got Hunter Tyson as like someone who I think in time could step into like whatever Bruce Brown does if he ends up leaving and if he gets some money. Like they went and got younger things that will take development, but guys that fit Jokic and guys that fit the way they play. That to me is just like really great drafting for a team that has very specific needs, but was pretty aggressive about going to fill them.
And experienced guys, too, right? They got Jalen Pickett as well, didn't they? Did that end up staying with them?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, it's like...
I believe so.
I think that the experience part of it is key. The shooting part of it is key. The ability to play off the ball. All those things are going to be... The thing that I love about Denver is you can kind of like link up the portions of players or kind of the qualities of players that maybe they go after. But for the most part... There isn't one thing that's like, oh, that's a Nuggets draft pick. Like I was going through it on Twitter this week, and I was, just reveling in the misery of how good this team is at not only building a roster that just won a championship, but also drafting. And I know those two things are connected, but the amount of sheer talent that they've drafted outside the lottery in the past decade or so, dating all the way back to Kenneth Faried, is insane. And so they just have this track record. I mean, I know that's Masai Ujiri, then Tim Connolly, now it's Calvin Booth. It's different people calling the shots, but the point is they find guys. And I think a lot of their scouting department and whatnot has been there for a while from everything you hear from Nuggets people. So I don't know if there's one quality that connects all three of the players that they walked away with, but they were aggressive in trading all throughout the week, trading up, trading to specific spots. You know that they had targets. They got guys that seem like, in theory, they will fit. And that's how this team has clearly decided that they're going to want to build going forward, because that's what they just did with Christian Brown and taking a risk on Michael Porter Jr. and even the guys that I was talking about a second ago from the past decade. A lot of those players ended up being guys that they were able to trade for some of the contributors that they have now. So their front office seems like a cheat code, and three guys in the top 40 who all seem like they'll fit pretty well is an awesome night for that team, considering obviously they're not going to be a lottery team anytime soon.
No, this is the template for how really good teams need to approach the draft, in my opinion. Obviously, it's easier said than done for them because they have a lot of their picks, they're flush, and can take some of these risks because they have Jokic and he's so stable. I get that, but this is like identifying your needs and filling them and like building in replacement plans. Like they're not on my winners and losers list, but it's I love the pick the Warriors made at I think 19 because like that's like a Dante DiVincenzo replacement. Of course, we look at them and think their track record with younger players has not been as strong as Denver's the last couple of years, and a lot of their picks have just not worked out in the way. So this can come and go. Strawweather or Tyson or Pickett could like end up not working out. In Denver, like that could happen. One of them probably won't pop, but I love the process of what Denver is doing. Brendan, who's your first winner?
Wait, can I read you the names of the guys that the Nuggets have drafted outside the lottery since 2010?
Yes,
Kenneth Faried.
Where were you in 2010? Is my other
probably
question.
In San Diego.
Let's
like
go back
I am
in
right
time.
Now.
Okay.
No, 2010. Where was I? I don't want. Some people don't know how old I am, so we'll keep that to myself.
I was in high school. I was in the earlier part of high school.
We'll say I was
point.
as well.
I'm
All right. Since 2010, Denver has drafted outside the lottery Kenneth Faried, Evan Fournier, Nikola Jokic, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, Malik Beasley, Monte Morris, Bones Highland, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Gary Harris, Jared Vanderbilt, Yusuf Nurkic, and Bol Bol. All outside the lottery. That's like a dozen
Pretty good.
high-level rotation players that have had long careers, some of them already. Some of those guys are already out of the league and already had long careers, and that's all outside the lottery. So that doesn't even include Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So elite front office. They're probably a lock to have a W for most draft nights, I think.
Yeah. All right. First winner and loser.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the winner. We got to keep it positive to start things off. Houston Rockets. I liked off the bat, I'll just say, at a certain point, a team that can afford to take a risk, who has the security as a front office to take a risk, whether that's because you have multiple draft picks or you're already a winning squad or whatever the case might be, you just need to end a fall. And we saw Cam Whitmore, that was one of the stories of draft night, be a guy who we, smart draft people, including Ricky O'Donnell on our show last week, was talking about, hey, is Cam Whitmore maybe better than Brandon Miller? And are they a little closer in value than we maybe thought? And all of a sudden, this guy's falling to what ended up being 20. So I just like Houston. They have a bunch of young guys. They're in no rush to win a title or do anything like that anytime soon. We'll take the medical risk. We'll do whatever needs to be done. At 20, it's just too low to keep letting somebody fall with where we are in our rebuild. Loved that. But I also love the Amen Thompson pick. I feel like he is maybe just like a basketball player like we've never seen before in terms of the combination of IQ and athleticism. I understand there's obviously jump shot concerns. Everybody has beaten that into the ground. We know what the deal is there. But at a certain point, again, similar to taking Cam Whitmore at 20, it's like you're picking at 4. You just need to take the best player that you can find, and their team is just insane right now with the level of athleticism that they have. And then Alperen Şengün, who is not that, and it's just like this weird combination of guys. But to have Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Cam Whitmore, throw him on there, Tari Eason, even Usman Garuba, who didn't play a lot under the last coach. I'm just really excited to watch these guys with a real coach and maybe a little more pressure to start winning, just start to form into a real team. And I think they have the talent. It's just a question of, is Ime Udoka up to the job of turning these guys into like, hey, let's play real NBA basketball now? I don't know, but I'm like super excited to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Cam Whitmore thing, the value they got him at is phenomenal. Like that in itself is, even if whatever the flags are, and we'll see what they have to say about it. Like getting a guy who was linked as high as 4 at 20 is really good value, and you couldn't have planned for that. The draft just kind of broke in your favor in that way. And like you run through the list of guys, you've named some of them, but it's like Thompson, Jalen Green, Sengun, like Jabari Smith. They're all at this point where they clearly have shown things in different ways, shapes, or forms. But they need to be molded into a certain direction. And like that's where I kind of like the Udoka hire. I'm curious to see like what he looks like in this context. That's one of the big questions I would have like about Houston going forward here. But I agree with you. I mean, like just getting Thompson and Whitmore, 2 like top 5 prospects on a lot of teams' boards, guys who like both could have been really high lottery picks, like that, and you add that to your stable, you're just in a good spot. Because even if some of this stuff doesn't all hit, you have so many like interesting prospects now that like some of these are going to hit, and you're in a great spot to absorb any losses that might come if some people don't hit.
They're also huge now. I mean, they were before in a way, but they have even more size now. I mean, like it probably allows them to feel more comfortable moving away from Kevin Porter Jr., maybe Josh Christopher, if Amen's going to be a guy who has to have the ball in his hands, or who you want to have the ball in his hands, right? And I think the other part of it too is that defensively, this is going to really help their young core to get Jabari and then Amen Thompson back to back, even regardless of what happens with Whitmore, who seems to be a pretty solid 3-and-D option in and of it himself. But it's like, to go from a core where you were like, we have Jalen Green, we have Kevin Porter, Şengün is not a great defender, like what's going on here, to in back-to-back drafts getting Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson, who are both going to probably be guys who can switch, have athleticism, can create turnovers, all that stuff. Like that isn't just like, let's let Jalen Green shoot and Şengün has some fun passes. You're starting to feel like, okay, we're young and athletic, but we also can play both ends. And it's, I mean, I'm really excited to watch. I think this team might be an awful 3-point shooting team, but I would still like to see them play.
I also really, Brendan, like one other thing I really like about this is just that they're gonna be able to throw different lineup types at you, just kind of built into this roster. You could do stuff where you play pretty traditionally and have Sengun at the 5, but you could have an Eason Smith front court with like Whitmore, Thompson, and Jalen Green all on the floor, and you're just huge. That size thing is just, as you mentioned, I think is a real plus for them. But you just have flexibility now, and now it's gonna, let's see who pops.
Yeah.
Let's see who becomes the head of the snake here a little bit. Like this
And
is
Udoka actually
going to be a really
play
competitive
the young guys that they have, because for some reason guys like Garuba, Ty Washington, they just weren't getting minutes under Silas, even though they were promising players. And it's like, at the very least, just let them all get on the court.
The competition of the young guys to see who like rises to the top, so to speak, is going to be, I think, just fascinating to observe. Excuse me, in the next couple of years. This is also just like I don't want James Harden to go to Houston.
Amen. Get it? Did you see what I did?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I do. I get it. They could use like give me like one like point guard who just can like move the ball for them in a traditional
I think
way,
Ty
and,
can
like,
be that.
Will be.
He was like the smart
Okay.
draft guys, pick last year. Kentucky, I mean, Kassan Wallace got drafted this year. Kentucky guards are always going to be better in the NBA than they were at Kentucky, and I feel like Ty is going to be that dude. I mean, maybe they'll still get one in free agency like we've talked about. I'm sure that's what you meant, but I think Ty is a guy who can grow into that as part of their actual like future too.
I like Tyus Jones on this team would be just kind of like fun. Just I don't like want that for Tyus Jones because I want him to maybe get out of DC at some point and get on a team that can win, because that guy's like a starting level point guard who just like is so dependable. But I would like he would make like a ton of sense in this kind of spot if you wanted just like a veteran to like keep the ships moving on time. You know, like keep all the trains on time. That would just make some sense. But he's now Washington Wizard. All right, I'm going to go to a loser next, Brendan. I'm going to say the Orlando Magic. I don't love their draft. Jet Howard, where they took him, felt early. Even if I get the wingspan and that's the Hammond thing and he can shoot it. Anthony, the black pick is going to be a really interesting bet on upside and development, and it's not very much like they didn't do anything that really would scream you're trying to move the needle forward with Paolo and Franz. Like maybe that comes in free agency and trades and things. Like what does Jalen Suggs' role in this team look like now? I just came away like a little bit more confused about what Orlando's roster construction is after this draft. They felt to me primed to be a consolidation team in some way, shape, or form, or punt up one of these picks down the road to a team that wanted to move up or get in on the action in some way. Maybe those deals just didn't work out. I don't want to say like we know exactly everything they were discussing with the other teams in the league. I just don't totally love what they kind of came away with here, and I just have now confusion about some of the guys on the roster.
Yeah, the black pick was the interesting one to me. I mean, would you have taken Dick over Howard? Is that kind of what you are thinking with, like, they did need shooting, but Howard over Dick was kind of one of the surprises of draft night, it felt like.
Or and you could have told me that they should roll the dice on Whitmore at that spot,
sure.
Like,
or trade back and maybe get
a
a Jordan Hawkins, or I guess he kind of got reached for, but Pochemski, something like that. Yeah, I think the black pick to me, what was interesting there is I like him as a player. I brought him up to Ricky O'Donnell when we were doing our draft preview. I think he's really interesting athletically and the way he plays basketball. And one of my big takeaways from this whole draft is, like, the wing revolution is here. Like, everybody in this draft was 6'7" or higher. You know what I mean? Like, outside of Scoot and a couple of other guys, it was wing after wing after wing. And so I like Anthony Black. I think he fits into that kind of futuristic view of what basketball might start and continue to become. But the Magic have a lot of those guys already. They don't need another one. And so to me, it was like Black felt interesting as, like, could he be a pacer? Could he be and go to Utah and be with the spacing that they already have with Markkanen and everyone else? I don't think that putting Anthony Black into a team that already has a little bit of a crowded half-court offense and a lot of guys who kind of need the ball, that one doesn't. I don't love it. So maybe they were just doing value. Black was kind of like the sixth best guy for a lot of people in this draft. So you don't want to just not take somebody if you think they can be a great player because they don't perfectly fit. Then again, the Magic kind of are at that spot where they need to maybe be thinking about that stuff. So it could just be that the lottery screwed them a little bit. They didn't really have a great plan for where they fell. Maybe those trades weren't there. I don't hate taking somebody who I'm telling you I like as a player. I'm not going to hit somebody too hard on that, but yeah, they do need to be thinking about fit because I think this team wants to make at least the play-in, if not, get into that 6, 7, 8 range next year.
Yeah, I still would be bullish on this team. I think we're still planting our flag with Paolo, with Franz. I like Jalen Suggs. If I was another team, Brendan, I would just be calling to find out the value of Jalen Suggs. I don't know what it would be. There's still some offensive growth to come, but that guy's an awesome defender. I think that guy's going to be able to play for you like in bigger games. I just think the skill set is going to really translate into really competitive basketball. If I was a good team or like a team on the up that just needed a guard or wanted a developmental piece or that both can play for me now and I can work on in some capacity, I would be just what are you asking for Jalen Suggs right now? Like what would it take to pull him out of Orlando? I'd just be curious to see what the price.
The impact we've been able to see guys like Gary Payton or Bruce Brown have in the playoffs that all the way going to the finals the past couple of years. It's obvious that if you're a strong turnover creating guard, you're going to be able to have a role in these games. That's when we talk about versatility, like guards who can guard up is really big, and Suggs seems like one of those to me. I know he can't shoot right now, but so be it. He can handle the ball. He's a lot more useful on offense than Gary Payton, and somehow the Warriors found a way to make Gary Payton work, right? So you should be able to do it. Did you see the thing with the Grizzlies offering stuff for Franz Wagner?
I didn't, but in the vein of like them throwing like the reported number of picks at Bridges and. That makes sense. Like, you should do that stuff. Yeah. Like, shoot your shot. They gave up 2 picks for Marcus Smart. Like, they have picks to burn still.
All right, let me go to my next one. I'll do a loser. Charlotte Hornets. I don't even know if I want to say Charlotte Hornets or everyone who lives in the city of Charlotte who likes basketball, because that's really what it felt like. A community was let down more so than even like a team made a mistake. Like. There's a video of the mascot dipping his head in disgust when this pick got announced at their watch party. There's all sorts of videos of different things in terms of reactions to this pick. And then, of course, Mitch Kupchak in his post-draft press conference effectively not being able to even answer the question of why they drafted Brandon Miller at number 2 over Scoot Henderson and what the deciding factors were. It's just crazy to me because it feels like Mitch Kupchak threw Michael Jordan under the bus a little bit in the lead up to this thing. Felt like maybe the front office wanted Scoot and MJ wanted Miller. But wasn't Mitch Kupchak hired to be the Michael Jordan's whisperer? Wasn't that literally the point of him arriving in Charlotte, was to be able to be the guy who could make these decisions in sync with the owner? Like, to have this big of a split on something that is this big of a decision is just the craziest part to me. I think Miller's going to be a fine player. I think he actually, the fit part you can't argue with. Charlotte is in desperate need of wings. If he can be a good version of that player and defend and shoot threes and everything else, he will fit. But to just have such a complete breakdown of what the plan is what's crazy to me here. It feels like this spells, how are you going to be Brandon Miller and walk into this situation and feel empowered when the team like openly did not want you to come there and the fan base is like downtrodden after taking you? That's really tough.
It's interesting too, Brennan. I've in addition to like prepping for ours, I like listened to another draft like recap thing, and it's so interesting that like people that really cover the draft full time, it seems like a lot of them ended up having Miller too. But then like any of the people that like kind of like, I would count us in this. It's like pay attention to the draft, but aren't like super detailed draft nicks. Favored Scoot. I think that divide, I don't think there's like a ton we can like project out of that, but I just found that kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. And I just say I'm just a Scoot believer. Yeah. Like I read the Robbie Callan had a great profile of him at Dime this week. Hanif had one. This Columbus-based poet named Hanif had a great one in ESPN this week as well. Like he's going to be in that G League documentary that's coming out later in the summer. Like everything you read about him, the mentality, the work ethic. Like believe in him, and I just also think him and LaMelo like could work. I understand there's like some defensive stuff there where like the size wise, LaMelo's never been a good defender. I just kind of would have went with it, and maybe, but like Brendan, maybe a winner that I didn't have that we should have had, just kind of in relation to the Hornets, is like I probably would give Portland a winning grade here, just because like I love the Chris Murray pick, I love the Scoot pick, and like yeah, what happens with Dame is like is a whole thing here. We'll see where that ends up. I don't really
We
know.
got another
what to
show
make
in
of.
3 days. I
Yeah,
guarantee it'll come up. Yeah, it's ongoing.
Well, I don't know if Sean Hyken, who has maybe done to me one of the best jobs. He does an incredible job covering the Blazers as like an independent guy. Had a tweet last night. I'm trying to find it right now. It sent it like probably like a little after midnight Eastern time, so like normal hours for people on the West Coast, and he's in Portland.
Yeah.
So, I was like looking up. I was like, I'll tell you. I was rewriting something because I had a draft pre-write done, and then the Cavs picked the Mooney Bates, and I was like, oh well, I have to read you all the work I just spent 20 minutes doing. That happens. Worth noting, Hyken tweets that Damian Lillard can't actually be traded until July 9th, 1 year after he signed his extension. So it makes sense that the current stance is, quote, giving the front office the first week of free agency to do enough. We're just like in a Dame holding pattern with that.
For 5 years.
Yeah, but like this just feels like it's bubbling. And
yeah.
Yeah.
It's no, I think Portland had a solid draft. I think Murray is fine for, the early 20s. I mean, he seems like a pretty built-in role player. I think the fact that his brother, who's a little bigger, came in and had such a strong rookie season, competed in the playoffs, makes you feel even better about just sort of the mentality side of things. I know they're not identical human beings, but that helps. And Scoot is definitely a guy from a mentality standpoint. Like, I do think that matters from Portland's standpoint, right? It's like the mentality stuff, the sort of intangible stuff that maybe people do feel when they spend time with Scoot. That matters if you're talking about Lillard is going to be moving on and the weight of a franchise is suddenly a little bit on your shoulders. You know what I mean? And like Shaedon Sharpe is a guy who had a weird path to the NBA. I don't know if he's ready for what that might look like. Anthony Simons also actually had a weird path to the NBA because he also did not go to college. And I'm not saying that holds him back. He's been in the league a while now, but is he that dude? I think Scoot is. And so I think that really helps you if it is time to move on from Lillard to have somebody like that. Whereas I'm not saying Brandon Miller isn't, but I do think Scoot gives that off and that matters. I have another winner here, which is the Dallas Mavericks. Okay. Pretty straightforward, and I really have one question for you at the end of all of it, but just to recap what they did. They had 10, they traded back to 12, got off of the Davis Bertans contract, which opened up their mid-level exception. I think I've seen differentiating stuff about if it's fully open or if they have to make one more move. Either way, that seems like what they're trying to go ahead and open up for themselves in free agency. Still got Derek Lively, who, depending on who you look at, maybe not the best prospect, but still the guy they wanted and a big which is what they needed, and there weren't a lot of those in this draft. Then they got a defensive wing at 24 who seems to be highly regarded, had a pretty good pre-draft process and kind of bolstered himself. And they added Richaun Holmes at that 24th spot in order to get that pick. So the question that I have with all of that is, I'm not sure if Lively's somebody you can just pencil in to be playing minutes for what wants to be a championship team next year in Dallas, but can they do that with Richaun Holmes? Like, I've seen different stuff of like, wow, I saw a Kings guy saying the Mavs had to basically spend $25 million to get the 24th pick, which is how much Richaun Holmes is guaranteed the next couple of years. But I also never really understood why Sacramento didn't play him. So I wonder if he could just come and play with Luka and have a little bit of a rejuvenation, and it's not just, we paid $25 million for the pick. It's like, no, we got a rotation player and the pick.
Yeah, he got caught in a little bit of a long gym there a little bit. He did there were some personal issues last year, if you remember, that like kept him out on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. You can Google some of that stuff if you'd like to. I think comparatively the business they did, like there was some reporting out of here in Cleveland about how like Dallas had called about Jared Allen. And like I think Allen's better than Holmes and like would fit really nicely with Luka. I also think like you got 2 first-round picks And I think like you could just like play Lively as like your backup for 12 minutes a game and like be okay.
Sure.
And I think that's worth it, right? At least in the regular season, I think you can do that. Holmes is not gonna like, this is his 4 seasons in Sacramento. 44 games played, 61, 45, 42. Like, so you're absorbing some risk. He's not played more than 61 games since he played a career best 70 in 18-19 when he was in Phoenix. So like there's definitely some risk, but like the price, and you create some free agency flexibility to do something in both your team. Like it's good business. Like and last year the numbers don't paint that, but like every other year in his career, he's like the number of the analytics and things will tell you like he was like a pretty impactful player in his minutes. Like I like the process of what they did here. I like what they're doing here. Is it like the highest end? No, but I think like considering they got two first round picks, both of whom make a ton of sense for them. They didn't have to like trade Josh Green in a trade. They still have the Tim Hardaway Jr. contract to move.
Yeah,
like they feel like they're in a good spot. Yeah, and that's even with saying that it's like their big free agency thing is probably to give Kyrie Irving some form of a decent amount of money, which is a choice.
I do think the mid level, if they are able to open it up, which I would anticipate they are, then that's a team that I hadn't really been thinking of when I'm going through kind of those guys. And that's a pretty nice destination if you're in that range as a player to go. And Dallas is going to have minutes for you because a lot of their guys that are currently under contract, they kind of don't really want, So it's like whether they keep some of those or not, I would imagine whoever they sign this year is probably going to have a good pathway to playing and, potentially winning a lot. So I don't think Kyle Kuzma is going to make more money than that, but people like that, Dylan Brooks, is he somebody? Or, players like that, I think that we should start thinking about Dallas as a pretty big suitor. But who's your next winner or loser?
I had the Rockets. My last big winner is the Utah Jazz. I just really like what the Jazz are doing. I like the Hendricks pick quite a bit. They are just totally all over the place in terms of like the athletes and kinds of guys they have. Keontae George from Baylor is an interesting pick. I like the creative juice of another combo guard there. There's been some talk that they want to flip Colin Sexton, and what they do with Clarkson will be interesting. So like maybe this is like a replacement for one of those guys. I think that's smart. And like Bryce Sensabaugh, I'm a little skeptical of the way he scores is totally going to translate 1-to-1 in the league. But at 28, that's like a good value to get some offensive juice. Like I just think like this roster is really just loading up with the really interesting things. Hendricks is the star of this to me. I just am a fan of what that guy can be.
Great fit next to Lowry.
But I think great fit next to Lowry. I just like what this whole roster is starting to look like. Like I think Abaji really showed some stuff through the end of the year. They have a ton of shooting. Will Hardy's a good development coach. I just think the process of what this all looks like makes a ton of sense to me.
Agreed. I don't have. It's interesting with the Jazz with the Keontae George thing. It's just again to harp on the wing part of this whole draft and that just being such a big takeaway to me. You saw Bufkin, George, Hood Schifino, Jaquez, Pochemski all go in order from like 15 to 19. It's funny how guards like that, like those, some of those guys might have just gone in the top 10 like 20 years ago. And now the wings are going, even if they have question marks. Bilal Coulibaly is the 7th overall pick in this draft. You know what I mean? And somebody like Hood Schifino, who would just be a prototypical like Stephon Marbury, whatever type of guy in the mid 2000s, he falls to 17 when he had some lottery buzz. And so I'm just going to be curious to kind of watch that group from 15 to 19 as they start their careers and just see like, is that the right way to evaluate this, or did we just get a little too wing happy and everything else? And I'm surprised kind of that a lot of these teams, again, like the Jazz and everyone else, just it felt like this was a pretty good deep draft to make a move up, to do that type of consolidation thing. And next year's draft doesn't seem like it's supposed to be as good. So our team's going to regret just continuing to take players at a certain point. And I'm not, it's a good problem to have, but it is just sort of the opposite end of like the Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell trades, where it's like, is it actually always a good thing to have like 3 picks in the first round and just sort of be forced to take guys you're unsure about because you don't have any better plan? I don't know. It's going to be funny and interesting to kind of keep an eye on that. I have one more I have the Pistons as a loser. I don't hate what they did, but I just don't really know what their direction is currently. We'll probably be able to evaluate them better by the end of the season. But my last winner, or the end of the offseason, my last winner was the Pacers. They had a lot of like NFL type movement on draft week. They did the Nuggets deal. They did a couple of other things. And at the end of the day, though, I was kind of criticizing them to you via text when we were talking in the lead up to the draft and a little bit early on in the draft. But I really like what they walked away with from a player standpoint. I think Jarris Walker is an awesome fit with that team. I think he's a really good fit with the fact that some of their guards don't play a lot of defense, and the fact that they have a pretty nice rim protector in Miles Turner. Just throw Walker in there as like kind of a Swiss Army knife, versatile, just huge dude to kind of wreak havoc a little bit with that core. And then I liked what they did at the end of the first with Ben Shepherd, who feels like a guy who can just step in and play, make threes, space the floor for Tyrese, and it seems like people say he can at least, defend capably, and he's a 4-year guy. So similar to, what we saw Mathurin do. I know he was only a 1-year guy, but he stepped in. I think you'll see that again with both of these Pacers picks, and they've just been really nailing the draft, and like they're a really fun young team after like 2 years of a reset all of a sudden.
Building really smartly around Halliburton. I think they still got some development work through. I'm curious to see what kind of splashes they make. The other team, Brendan, I just want to hit on really quickly that I should have thought about is the Sacramento Kings, because I'm just wondering what they're setting up here. They create a cap space for themselves.
Yeah, like $30 million.
What are they going to go spend that on? I'm